Guard my laws. Do not let your livestock mate with another kind. Do not sow your field with mixed seed, and do not put a garment woven of two sorts of thread upon you. Taken from Wa'ikra 19, verse 19, in the Scriptures translation. In examining this verse, I want to focus in on the three phrases found in this verse: another kind, mixed seed, and two sorts. These are all translated from the same Hebrew word, milayim. Now, I'm not sure why they are translated differently in most translations, since they actually can be rendered the same, as is done, for example, in the New World Translation, where it reads, "You people should keep my statutes. You must not interbreed your domestic animals of two sorts. You must not sow your field with seeds of two sorts. And you must not put upon yourself a garment of two sorts of thread mixed together." This passage has produced much discussion as to how it is to be understood. I would like to offer my perspective, one that is taken from examining the marriage root, that is the two-letter root, of the word alongside some other words sharing the same root to create a midrash. First we have the word I just mentioned, kilayim, which means two kinds. Then we have the word kal, which means all or every. Next we have kala, which means to detain or to shut up. And then lastly we have the word kala, which means to finish. The marriage root shared by these words is kaf lamed, which you can see in the picture there in orange, which I've discussed in my teaching. Hebrew words revealed, hedge, finished, comprehend, which you can see on my YouTube channel. The basic concrete action behind this root is something that is finished or completed. So, to kala, meaning to finish something, is to bring something to completion, no longer continuing to be worked on. To kala, as in to detain or to shut up something, is to act in such a way as to keep something from continuing. It stops, in other words. It is detained, so it appears in a finished state. To kal, which is all or every, that is the state of something that is finished. It is the sum total of all that is finished. All of it is done. And then we have the word we're considering today, kilayim, which equals or means two kinds. And this word is in the dual form. It's indicated by the yod mem ending. And these are two things that have been finished, complete in and of themselves. So keep that in mind. These something that is kilayim, it's not talking about three or more things, plural things. It's talking about two things, and the fact that it has the kaf lamed root means these two things are complete. They are finished. Okay? Now the concept of something finished is first seen in the creation account in Bereshit 1 and 2. The creation account in Bereshit 1 is all about that which is finished through separation. For example, we have light from darkness. We have water from water, both vertically and horizontally. We have plant and animal life and human life from the land. And then lastly, we have a day of ceasing from the days of laboring. Well, when our Creator came to the end of the sixth day, in Bereshit 2, he said that everything was kal, meaning that everything that existed then was just the way he wanted, each and everything complete in and of itself. Now, this being true, what do you think it says when someone decides to take two completed things, kilayim, and then to mix them together to make something further from it? I want you to think about that for a moment. When I think of it, I see it saying that we think we can improve upon what God finished. That we need to add our whatever it is to truly bring something to finish. In effect, we call God a liar. While we can see God finishing all by the act of separation, as we read in Bereshit 1, man mixes it again, trying to improve upon the finished work of God. And that, my friends, is what man has been doing since the very beginning. Mixing. Well, with this in mind, let's return to the Wa'ikra passage and make application. This time I will be quoting from my own translation. You all watch over cultivated mark, my grooves. You do not make your exalting animal foursquare, dual finish cultivated. You do not disperse up your area that nourishes, dual finish cultivated. And dual finish cultivated masking garment of linsey woolly, he does not ascended upon you, or toward you rather. Now I want you to compare this with a parallel passage in Devarim, where it reads in verse 9 of chapter 22, do not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seed, lest the yield of the seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. Now here it is in my translation to compare it with. You do not disperse up your vineyard, dual finish cultivated. Otherwise, the fullness of the dispersing up part, cultivating straight you do disperse up, and entered mark of the vineyard, she is allocated apart. Now, if you read this carefully, you will see that dispersing up, that is sowing, of that which is dual finish cultivated, that's our word, kilayim, in this case, two different kinds of seed, to disperse up what is dual finish cultivated. When you do that, you end up allocating a part, which here is translated as defiled in the other translation. It's defiled how? By setting apart. Allocating a part is to set it apart. In this case, in a negative sense. And what is it set apart from? What is it allocated apart from and thus defiled? From its fullness, from its yield. What it would normally yield if it were planted by itself as the Creator intended. It is set apart, in other words, from its finished state, and thus is defiled. Doesn't give the yield that it should have. In such a field, according to Jewish custom, would be burned, as it was unfit for use. This ties in with the other two prohibitions in this section. To mate two different types of animals is to produce negative results as well. The most commonly understood animal showing this is the product of mating a horse with a donkey. What you end up with is a sterile mule, one that cannot reproduce. Then, with regard to the weaving of linen and wool together, physically speaking, science has proven this, to put these two together is to cause electrons to be generated by the wool, and it gets passed to the linen that it's woven with. The linen rejects it, sends it back to the wool, and this back and forth happens with the electrons. very, very rapidly as each rejects those electrons. Well, this causes the electricity to sap out of our body. And as that occurs, it weakens us, and especially in a hot climate. Very, very negative effects. And I've even read somewhere where if this state does not change, it could eventually lead to death through the organs starting to fail. So it's a very serious thing. Now, while all of these are physical laws with physical consequences, they also hold spiritual meaning as we look deeper into the principle behind them, for they relate very much to the preceding verses of 1 through 18 in that parsha. In the Hebrew reading, which is grouped according to parshas, verses 1 through 18 are connected with what we read in verse 19 that we're considering today. Those 18 verses, when we read them, are directly related to the 10 words written by the finger of Elohim. And the connection I see is that our Father does not want us to mix anything with the finished statements of His will, mixing what He has separated. To do so has serious consequences. I hope you have enjoyed this lesson, and until next time, Shalom.